As we'll talk about, faculty and classes on how to use smartphones. The big takeaway today is that if you copy the link that I'm going to show you at the end of the class, which is going to be easier than searching, if you have an iPhone and you don't have Filmic Pro, which is really a phenomenal app, you with an American.edu account can get a free download. It's a $15 value. I have 1,000 codes so far. It's available to the campus for staff, faculty, and students. So take advantage of it. Right now I've got 1,000. I think we've used about 200. But if we run out of 1,000, I can get 1,000 more. So please take advantage of it. It's the best thing that you can do to make the iPhone work very well for video. I have other recommendations on photo apps and sound apps, and Jill talked about it before. But, I'm available for doing 45-minute to an hour-and-a-half sessions in classes. For faculty, I can do an hour. I can do two or three one-hour sessions over a period of days, so that you can get to work. So I think we should just go around and introduce ourselves. Jesse?
Sure. I'm Jesse Meiller. I'm in environmental science, and I just started using videography and with Larry last year. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second, but do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Kusimba from anthropology, and I'm not a technological person at all, but I teach a kind of introductory class in anthropology, and I had been assigning a series of very rigorous papers, and I realized that I wanted to do have students work with different kinds of media and do different kinds of assignments, so that's what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah. We're going around. I'm Larry Levin. I got my MFA here, and I'm now teaching at Trinity.
I'm Diamond Davidson. I'm a second year MFA film student. I'm Jennifer Lopin-Chavez. I'm infiltrating. I'm from Georgetown Center for Teaching and Learning, and I support technology enhanced learning.
You say
Coming for some good ideas. I'm Destiny. I'm an MFA film and electronic media student, second year as well.
I'm Lisa Luther. I'm the Assistant Technology Specialist in the AFC.
I'm Sid. I am a second year MFA student as well.
I'm Dawn. I graduated SOC MFA in film in 2015, and I am starting my first semester at it.
I'm Caroline Chagborn. I'm also a second year MFA student.
I'm Robert Boyd. I'm actually a first year MFA student. So, yeah.
Keo Kim, faculty in the Department of Environmental Science.
Jill Olmstead in SOC.
Kira Amaral. I'm the Director of Strategic Communications for Office of the Provost and Academic Affairs.
Uh-oh.
I'm Tara Lipland. I'm an instructional designer at the Education Design Lab, a nonprofit.
Oh, cool. Welcome to
All right, so I'll just get started. It sounds like there's a lot of MFA, either program or administrative people, but then some instructors as well. So I don't know. I'll just give a little bit of background about what I did, and then and the resources and how I use them, and then I'll just show you some little snippets that my students did. And then I think that we're going to, and then Sibel will do her spiel, and then we'll just open it up and just have a discussion about how to use this and things, lessons learned, and things that work and stuff. So I started out by doing this because I started teaching for AU Scholars this last year, and my class was on sustainable farming, which is just the topic, but the second half of the class in the spring is a research class. So 1 credit research class, but it's for 3 hours of block time. And it kind of focused on, last year, them going to Cuba and studying sustainable agriculture in Cuba. And so how to actually do the research while we're abroad and gather data. It's a little bit tricky because it's only a 1 week time period, right? Like you're not doing multiple time points, and so there were surveys involved and things like that. And so how to actually make that meaningful and perhaps actually a little bit more interesting than just collecting data and then putting some PowerPoints up. And so I worked with Larry on trying to use videography or having the students actually approach it from a more of a multimedia perspective, not necessarily using videography. It wasn't a requirement, but it was encouraged, and we gave them the skills and the strategies to actually be able to use those technologies. And so in doing that, the class was set up that I presented a whole bunch of different content at the beginning of the class, but really they had to come up with their own research question. Once they came up with their research question in their groups, we then worked with them on developing how they're actually going to collect that data. What are they going to do when they get to Cuba? How are they going to actually approach their question? And so Larry came into the class and did I think it was about an hour and 20-minute session on how to use their iPhones for actually documenting their research while they're in Cuba. I should preface this with also saying that I, before the semester even started, went to Larry through CTRL and did training with him individually, one-on-one, 2 different sessions. So that I knew what I was doing, because I had no idea how to use smartphone for videography except for, random things that you video as you're walking down the street, right? Like I didn't know what I was doing. So Larry taught me. And he also taught me a couple little, actually very affordable, add-ons, things that we could use, if that include like a monopod, accessories, the iPhone holder, some stabilizers, one little mini tripod like the Gorilla one. Anyway, he showed me a couple different things that were affordable that I could actually buy with my budget for my class. And so just with a couple $100, I was able to get a couple things for the groups to share. It wasn't enough for all the students or anything, but they could share these things. And so brought those into the classroom, played around with them. Larry taught them how to actually take videos and some of the things to look for in taking the videos. And that was only an hour and 20-minute session. Then later we went to use the media center in the library and set up a session with them to actually teach them how to use iMovie. And we could have done different software. It could have been anything. We chose iMovie because the majority of them, after pulling them, had an iPhone. Once you learn iMovie, you can take those skills and apply them to other software as well. And so we thought, okay, we'll use the one that actually makes the most sense for this class of 13 students. And so that's what we did. We did a session with them. Larry gave my class an assignment before they went to the library where they actually had to go out and film something. I forget how long it was supposed to be, just a couple minutes. Yeah, and then they were supposed to take that when we went to the library. Larry wasn't involved in the library part of it. After that, his hands were off, and I then took it as much as I could. And the students then edited their videos that they took out and about. And it could have been on any subject. But that was part of them building the skills that they needed to then apply later. It didn't have to be about farming at all. Most of them were like videoing things in their dorm rooms or out on the street somewhere. One of them was super funny and interesting, but most of them were relatively boring. They were just developing the skills to actually be able to use it later. We did a little bit of training on how to do interviews and surveys, just because they needed their skills to actually be able to use them if they're going to be incorporating them into the videography part. Okay, so I thought now they put all of their skills to use, which was really cool to see. They did it in different ways. Some of them did an entire video segment for their project. And the whole purpose in doing this was so that they would be able to present something at the AU Scholars Research Symposium at the end of the semester, at the end of the spring semester every year. And so they had some product. And so we'll talk a little bit when we get to the panel part of it about assessment. I'm not going to talk about that now, but we can talk about that a little bit later. But so as far as how they were graded on it, but they did take the skills, they integrated them in their groups in different ways. They moved around their topics and actually showed them in different ways. One of them, like I said, was a full little mini documentary of about 10 or 11 minutes long. I'll just show a couple little snippets of that, not the whole thing, don't worry. And then another one took some videography, or took some videos while they were abroad and used it as their introduction to their project, which is what they showed at the symposium. But it was more of an introduction to a website that they designed with a bunch of different blogs and different photographs, and they kind of used their video as an intro. So I'll show that intro video first, And then I'll show a couple little snippets and you can ask questions about it or
Can
whatever
we,
as well.
kill the light? Do you have audio on it too?
Yeah, there's audio. Oh yeah, so the microphones were pretty important too.
Function key. You need to connect your computer to the system.
What?
It's on VGA.
It's on VGA, so it should work.
Oh. It's connected to and have to respond.
No. Have you used VGA in this room yet?
No.
Larry, do you have the HDMI one? I can try that if the HDMI
I
works
have an
better.
adapter downstairs. If you guys need
No, yeah.
Thank you, though.
all of them.
I don't think you took it out before.
Take this out.
No, that's
No.
the HDMI. This is the VGA.
Anybody see a gray bag? Do you have, is it HDMI that you use?
Well,
USB-C?
Sibel, do you want to try to connect yours then and see if you can?
Yeah.
All right, sure.
Yeah, you start, oh, here it is, yeah. There you go. Buried. There you go.
Thank you.
So what you need to do is you bring it up, we'll unplug this. But you
Yeah,
have
no,
to- You have to take the HDMI.
I just need to find it. Where is it? Yeah, but where is it plugged in? I need to unplug it from this.
Sure.
So that means I'm gonna put my computer up here. It doesn't reach. Can you move it or close it? Thanks. Alright.
So I downloaded that app, started looking at it.
Yeah.
So how would I find out if you're using availability this semester? Still okay.
Just leave that.
I think it would be good. I'm really inspired.
Okay.
After, my first
So let's
experience doing
hope
it.
this works. This was one of my students, the intro to their project. And you can see, well, you'll see. Why is the audio not working? Okay, the audio is not working.
Well, it should be coming out of this computer.
It's not, it's coming out of my computer.
You have to go.
Hear it?
You have to go
On March 11, 2017, the AU Scholars Sustainable Farming class departed for Cuba. As the name of the class implies, we went to do research on sustainable farming. Sustainable farming is any type of farming practice that protects the environment through the understanding of ecosystems and the long-term effects of farming. Cuba, a country that was for the later half of the 20th century mostly inaccessible to Americans, is a hotbed for sustainable practices, which were implemented out of necessity. Our class, led by our professor, Dr. Meiller, had spent the first half of the semester learning and trying to understand why Cuban agriculture was the way it was. By the time we got to Cuba, we had all been split up into groups, with each group focusing on a different aspect of sustainable farming in Cuba. We went to farms, plantations, and explored Havana, gaining valuable insight into the real-world applications of the practices we had been learning all about. This website will act as your gateway into our group's project. You will be able to find several blog posts focusing on a variety of topics from economics to health, as well as a link to the photos we took while in Cuba. We hope you enjoy.
So Larry was like, slow down, because he was talking so fast. And that's a problem that everyone has when they do video. I don't know anyone that doesn't, right?
So here's the deal. So just as a recommendation when you're thinking about narration, shorter declarative statements, active verbs, and you're not reading a script, you're telling a story. And Julie, you can talk about that. And, voice control.
It's very hard.
It's very hard, yeah. But those are some quick.
Because kids today talk
Way
really quick.
And the voices are not dynamic. You're not emphasizing the words and phrases, and and then there's a horrible drop off at the end of sentences. Either that, or you sound like you're from California in the '80s in the valley.
Right.
So anyway, some quick takeaways.
So I think so you could tell from this video that they use a combination of live video footage and also photographs that then they integrated into the video. This last one has meaning because he was actually bit by a dog while we were in Cuba. It's funny because he's fine, don't worry. But it required a trip to the ER and all sorts of stuff, so they put this in here for some lightness in the end.
Were they rabies vector?
Yes. So what we learned about that is that they don't have rabies in Cuba because rabies, it has been essentially eradicated in Cuba, so they don't ever worry about it. So when we went to the ER, they were like, oh no, he doesn't need shots or anything because we're in Cuba. But yet us in the US are like, oh my God, he was bit by a dog, a stray dog. He needs to, anyway. So as soon as we came back, he got shots here.
So another thing for international or even some domestic travel, you should be inoculated for rabies, and you should never go near.
He actually wasn't near the. I mean, like.
I can imagine. I can understand.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna show one other one.
And you don't get vaccinations through your stomach.
No, but it's a series.
It's three shots.
Yeah. So this other group, I had 4 groups. This other group I'm just going to show a couple minutes of their overall presentation. That was a very long. Well, for the class, it was very long. It was about almost 11 minutes. But they use video for most of theirs, including interviews with farmers and with experts. We met with different academic experts and people that actually did research in agriculture when we were in Cuba. And then, but I think the segment I'm going to show is where we went to a tobacco farm. So I'll show that.
Next, we went to a tobacco farm in Vinales and spoke with a tobacco farmer regarding the fertilizers and inputs he used there.
Gallinaza. Gallina is chicken. Gallinaza is chicken.
At the tobacco farm, the farmer informed us that he used fertilizers including chicken manure and compost. And although the farm was far away from Havana, the sustainable practices were similar to Organiponico Alamar's, underscoring the commitment to these practices across the island. The farmers
You can see that they were also using voiceover, which was really a struggle for them. So when they came back, everything was in Spanish. We had some people that were Spanish speaking in the class, but not everybody was. So we used the language lab on campus also to help them translate, which then they put, what is that called? subtitles, but then they also did voiceovers to save time during the interview. So while they were showing the interviews, they learned that technique from Larry as well, because while you're interviewing, just listening to someone speak in another language, even if you're reading the subtitles, is not very interesting. So they tried to summarize some of what was actually in the interview. And then I wanted to go to the end. Let me check the time for that one real quick. So the end of this one, I wanted to show you just kind of like the final part of this one. Stop right around there. And they were interviewing a restaurant owner here, but then you also see that kind of the culmination of the project at the end after this.
So we work with the client in mind.
Nosotros trabajamos con personas, con la salud de personas,
So we work
un servicio.
because we are providing
No
good
nos
service.
interesa dar un servicio.
We are not interested in buying cheaper, but buying better product. Because in our hands, in part, is the health of the customer.
For the Cubans, the health of the people is valued over the price and quantity of the produce. A different mentality exists in which the large quantity and low price of foods that use synthetic chemical inputs are not valued over a consumer's health.
¿Gustaría utilizar productos químicos para fertilizar si pudieras? No.
No, porque mi país somos socialistas, somos hijos de Fidel Castro. Hace 50 años nacimos acá y cuando nacimos no existía nada. Y nos basamos para producir el campo, nos basamos en lo que teníamos, en lo natural, lo más rústico, lo más tradicional. Y hasta la actualidad tenemos lo rústico, tenemos lo tradicional.
He said no.
So hearing the whole explanation.
To the farm workers, the sustainable methods have been a consistent part of their life, and they're considered traditional should not be abandoned just because new options might soon be available. The results from our field research show that while Cubans would willingly accept industrial equipment, they see little value in adopting synthetic chemical fertilizers. Since much of Cuban agriculture relies on sustainable practices, the Cuban people are in favor of maintaining their sustainability and health of their communities.
All right, that's my class. Yeah, so I was very impressed with what they created, especially because I am not a tech savvy. Well, I wouldn't say that I am, but now I guess I'm starting to become much more tech savvy with Keto and Larry's help. But I think this is in their capability. They are able to do this, and they want to do these kinds of multimedia. Use of multimedia in the classroom, whether they're actually incorporating it into projects or they're finding ways to actually to use media in ways that's more interesting to them instead of just a PowerPoint or a Prezi or something like that really, it doesn't resonate with them as much. And so, whereas some of them decided to just do websites or just do blogs with photographs or with little video snippets, some of them really got into the videography part of it. I'll be taking these skills and using them again this coming semester. I'm teaching the class again, a little bit more science, a little bit less economics, and more focused on, but we're going to Costa Rica this time, so we're going to be doing it again. And Larry's going to come into my classroom and work with my class again this semester.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes, you are.
The trainees guy.
Before we switch it up, does anyone have any specific questions to the videos or anything?
Yeah. I wondered, did you do any peer feedback rounds or anything on the videos? How did they polish them?
Yes. So we had, and that's part of the assessment also. So they got peer feedback, and we actually partnered with another class that they showed their presentations to. The other class didn't use video, but we shared their presentations, and they got peer feedback from their peers in the class as well as from this other class. And that was so that they could, I think having it earlier in the earlier stages would be even better. We had it just 2 weeks before their presentation, so it didn't allow a whole lot of time for finagling. But the reality is we get back from our spring break trip, and then we only have about 4 weeks before they have to present anyway. So trying to shove that all into 1 week sessions is tight anyway. And I want to give them enough time to use the language lab or use the media center or whatever other resources they need to use. But that was a component of the assessment as well.
One thing, just one thing to think about in terms of translations is to use Google Voice or post the audio to YouTube and then do auto translate. I think you can save the translation.
Great.
You can also do captions that way, just for
Yeah, that's
accessibility
what I did.
purposes.
Yeah.
Well, that was, I think, supposed to happen for this one, but it didn't. Okay, what was your question?
I'm wondering with this upcoming trip, will you start using, some would see it as gimmicky, but I think it could help, like time-lapse functions or slow motion functions, just to mix it up a little bit in your footage?
That would be great if you want to come in and teach them how to do that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to do that, and with our 1 hour and 20-minute session with Larry, we didn't get into those kinds of skills. If they are welcome to do it, if they feel comfortable with it, or want to seek some outside
With Filmic Pro, it's easy.
Okay.
And also with hyperlapse. If anybody uses time-lapse, hyperlapse is the best.
No, you're right. That would definitely, especially for the 10-minute one, that would have varied it a lot. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Okay, do you want to swap in? Sure.
I'm going to move it up here because it's.
Oh, I see. All right.
Well, also one of the things while we're switching out, one of the things that you talk about in any session is the decision-making behind horizontal video versus vertical video. And there's an
Where's the cord? Oh, right here. Oh, are you doing VGA? This is HDMI though.
A reasonable, a reasonable thing to consider. Research has been done that is showing that vertical video.
Okay, so you have to use VGA.
Seems to be more authentic than horizontal professional video. And National Geographic 2 years ago told its producers that anything that you're doing for behind the scenes, meant for Instagram, meant for Facebook, meant for social media, is to be vertical video. So that's a consideration. The days of saying, oh, why you shoot it vertical? Not necessarily.
It's not working for VGA.
Yeah, it's a consideration, it's a decision. Mixing it up is a pain in the butt.
I wonder if this is. I think it's a problem with the VGA itself.
Yeah, you have to plug in the audio.
There's no audio.
It should be.
The audio is part of
the VGA in there. It's not staying in. And it's the screws won't stay in. So I'm not sure VGA is going to work.
Do you have HDMI?
No, she does not.
No, I'm saying the VGA cord in there is not staying in.
Oh.
It's like on the back corner.
Let's look.
I'm pretty sure. If that's an older laptop, I'm pretty sure it's on the back. We can double check. It might not be.
So maybe just I'll fill in the time here. So
yeah,
I
here's
teach a
HDMI
class
right
called
here.
Anthropological theory, which is like it's an introductory course in anthropology, and I've been teaching it in a very traditional way the past couple of years.
Yeah, I emailed you about closed captioning, I'm sure.
This course is really
it's you.
required in our major, so I have to get a lot of the principles and ideas of the discipline across to the students during a very short time. So I would have them do a series of very short and well-known readings in my field, and they would have to write a series of short papers. So I became kind of dissatisfied with this class. The content's relatively difficult, and the assignments became rather rote, and they were all focused on writing, and I wanted to diversify the kinds of skills and perspectives, ways of learning, and so on. And so I really just began this process so I can't show my.
Well, I think you can. We got HDMI.
Okay. Maybe do this and have it duplicate. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, one of the themes of the class is symbolic behavior,
one of the things that humans do that anthropologists talk a lot about is how humans represent the world through symbol and communicate those symbols to other people through language or through any kind of cultural expression. And I wanted to give them an opportunity to sort of apply those perspectives to a real life event. So the assignment was for the students to attend a ritual, and here we are, yay, a ritual during which symbolic ideas and behaviors are communicated and shared with others. And so every October in AU, there's a high-heeled drag race down in DuPont Circle, which takes place at Halloween, but it's also just a kind of opportunity for expressions of sexual identity, drag culture, and so on, and it's a lot of fun. So I decided to send the students down there to have them apply some of these ideas from anthropology and to do something with their iPhone or smartphone to sort of create a visual anthropology of this event rather than just the usual written paper. So I actually gave the students 3 different things they could do, partly reflecting my own, just evolving understanding of these new kinds of assignments. They could do just a regular written paper and include 2 photographs. They could do a photo essay such as this one, or they could do a 2 to 5 minute short film they've taken on their iPhone. And I didn't even know Larry, and now I realize I'm like so embarrassed. I'm glad I don't have those because this is just very new for me. So it's odd to give this assignment. But what I had students do is first they went down to the event in the evening, the Tuesday before Halloween. Everybody took video and film, and I created just a Google Docs, and I had students upload all of their footage, or some of their best footage. So some of their best photographs they took at the event. If they had short film, they could do that. And so first in class what we did was we shared all of the footage and the film on this Google Docs site, and we accessed it and we talked about it. We talked about it and related it to the themes of the class. And then what I said was that students could go ahead and make a photo essay such as this one, which is just a series of slides where she has, a variety of film from the event. She is friends with someone who was in the event, and here she is, kind of her self-portrait, and here are more pictures from this high-heel drag race. It's a very colorful, fun event. There's a lot of joy here, a lot of self-expression. A lot of the drag queens want to be photographed, which raises a big problem for me as an anthropologist because, there's certain ethics involved in capturing people's images, and normally you would worry about that. But in this case, we talked about how the point of the event is for people to be noticed and to be photographed and to be seen. And so they normally, taking photographs of people is part of the event. So that erased it for me. And then I had students create either a photo essay such as this one, or their video, or their more traditional kind of text-based assignment, but incorporating some footage. What I really liked was having everybody share everything erased one of the issues that I was worried about, which was students having technological problems. And for me, the issue with using this kind of assignments in the classroom is that I have so much on my plate content-wise that I want them to learn. I don't want them to get lost in the technological problems, and that's why I think I need to have someone like Larry come in, and that would really allow me and free me to develop this kind of an assignment more. And I think when you don't know a lot about the technology, you're worried that that will become the centerpiece of the student experience. You want them to learn about anthropology, not about how to make an iPhone film. Although those two things should go together. They should reinforce each other, not have to be one or the other. And one thing about using technology is that when students inevitably have trouble, they might blame you or you might feel guilty, and so there's always that issue involved. But for me, the main point was I was interested in the content of the essay next to the photograph, frankly, but we talked more in class about how to make those two things reinforce each other. We talked about what good photographs were, what kinds of expressions of culture, in brief, these photographs were trying to represent or trying to capture, right? And so this was a really successful essay for me. First of all, this class is a required class in our major. There's a lot of theoretical content. It's a little bit like taking your medicine. You know, you start out with 19th century social theory and it goes downhill from there. So this class really livened it up because it got to give them a chance to apply some of these ideas to actual living, breathing humans around them and what they were doing. So it really reinforced the contemporary relevance of a lot of these core ideas in anthropology for them. A couple of people did short films. I don't want to show them because they said they were very personal and they didn't want them shown. So one person was actually in the event, and I was very honored that this person chose to show me how they transformed themselves into one of the people at the event, and that was really that was something that wouldn't happen in a traditional assignment. So that was very moving for me, and I really appreciate their openness. So a lot of students connected to this personally, and I made sure that I told them, I'm sort of a content person, and I told them I was really going to read the essay, and I was comfortable with the marriage that I was able to make there between the two things. So, but again, this is my very first time using technology. I want to do it more. I think it's really important, so I was really happy to meet Larry, and here I am.
So before we don't have too much time, we only have about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So one very brief, could you both comment on how you evaluated the work?
We have longer.
We do? Oh, you're at 12:15?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think we started early.
Oh, so
No, it was from 11 to 12:15.
Oh, okay.
So what's that?
Huh?
That's wrong.
They announced that this morning that it's supposed to start at 11.
And I
Yeah.
was there.
It's okay.
I know.
Yeah, we have time.
That's what we did.
I'm saying we have a little bit of time. Sorry. So maybe
Yes, exactly.
okay. So I can talk a little bit about how we evaluated or how I did. My class was a 1-credit research class, right? Like and it was for freshmen. They're AU scholars, but they're first-year students, and so the expectations are pretty high for a 1-credit research class for first-year students. But the bulk of the grade for the course was project development, not the actual product. That was about 20% of their grade. The project development was 60% of the grade. I also had them do a project proposal where they gave a presentation on what they were going to present, the topic, content, but also how. The multimedia, how they were going to approach it, and what skills they needed to actually do that, and whether or not they had them. So they had to think about the logistics of doing it also, how they were going to collect their data, how they were going to then present it as well. So there were those 3 components. I used a rubric for the grading at the end for the actual presentation, which was also used by the students themselves when they were reflecting on each other's products 2 weeks before the presentation. So that's how they gave each other feedback as well. And I think that worked pretty well. I also had them assess each other within the group. So a peer evaluation within the group, which is confidential. They submit it just to me. No one else sees it. I then take that into consideration when I'm coming up with their group grades. Because the reality is there's always group issues. But it's a small class. We're working really close together for the entire project, and so you pretty much have your finger on what's going on in all the groups. But there's always issues they have to work around. So I take those into consideration. I think that's.
Is the peer review, does that include a reflection on the production and post-production process?
So they're supposed to actually, for the peer evaluation, is really more how the group worked together. There's specific elements that they actually have to comment on, the commitment to the group, the product, and the timeliness of how people, and then they're supposed to actually, so those are actually grades that they're giving out of 10 points for each of them. And then there's a comment section that I ask them specific questions like, tell me about how your project developed and who contributed what, and this kind of thing.
So for mine, again, most of my evaluation was more like, frankly, the anthropological content. We talked really briefly about what makes a picture a good picture. There shouldn't be a lot of blank space, and I'm looking for an image that has a lot of symbolic content to it so you can link it to the material in our class. But overall, I didn't develop that idea of evaluating the form of their technical production, just because that wasn't
really the main point of it all. But I think that I could definitely grow in that direction more. Again, for me, it's already, the course is already, you know, very content driven. But in the same way that you work with a student on how do you write a good paper, you need to be able to work with a student on how do you produce, you know, this kind of media. So, you know, it does have to go together.
I had a question for you. If did the other students have access to the Google Drive? Could they see each other's presentations?
I just let everybody share everything. Everybody could share photographs as long as they attributed their photograph. You know, I'm using so-and-so's photograph. Just because this is the first time I did it and I didn't feel like making that a big part of the assignment because I had not done it before. And I also asked students, do you have an iPhone or access to an iPhone? I think it's important not to assume that everyone has this.
Well, it can be a smartphone, but
yeah.
Not everybody has a smartphone. But even if you have an old flip phone, you can still use it.
You can still, a lot of people still do photographs.
Mine was a little bit easier because they were in groups. So I just made sure that at least one person in the group had a smartphone or access to one.
Yeah.
I think also when the sharing of the photos, we had that problem where we were in Cuba and somebody's battery died and they didn't have it, they hadn't charged their phone, even though we tell them 5,000 times to charge it overnight every night. But it was Cuba, so sometimes that wasn't possible. So we did end up sharing a lot of the media also, and so we created a Google Drive for them or a Google folder for them to share photos and videos, especially interviews with experts, because they all took the information and used it in different ways. But the media itself, maybe only one group actually captured it really well. Or the audio wasn't working on somebody's phone, or the microphone wasn't working or something. So they did share the media, which actually I think was kind of a crucial part to it because it really was about the end product, not whether or not they actually captured it themselves. They were taking it and using it as long as they attributed it.
Yeah, I found this experience gave my students a real sense of esprit de corps, and sharing the photographs really also reinforced that when we were back in the classroom the day after they attended the event. So I let them share these photographs partly because I was more interested in what they said about the photograph. That's what I wanted to know.
So questions, thoughts?
So whether it's a faculty member who wants to invest in some accessories to start maybe trying this out in their own classrooms, or whether it's in a department on campus, what would you say, with a budget in mind, what would you say would be kind of those initial accessories that you would recommend that won't necessarily break the bank, but could really help initially to see if this is in fact something that they can incorporate?
Do you have that slide somewhere?
No, but I can share that with you. Did you register for this session?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll send links to a presentation.
He's got it with all laid out what accessories.
Yeah. But one of the audio was the biggest problem. I think the audio is better on the video than we heard through your speaker.
I know.
But it's still an issue. So external microphones are really important. Inexpensive, about $25 to $30 clip-on microphones called lavalier mics are terrific for interviews and you really need clean sound. The alternative is to use one iPhone for cinematography and another iPhone, if I'm filming in the medium shot, just hold another iPhone under as a microphone and do a voice memo. And then so long as the video has a clean audio track, Final Cut Pro, I don't know about iMovie, but it's easy to sync up.
Okay.
So audio is much harder to do well on an iPhone or with iPhoneography or a smartphone filmmaking than video. Okay. So that's one thing. So a good clip-on mic for interviews, and then I didn't bring a very long
with the
cable.
long cable. That was the key.
Yeah, and you can buy an extension cable. So it comes with a 6-footer. You can buy the right cable to extend it, a little bit longer.
There are these other mics that you can hold, but they don't work very well, and you get so much of the like the ambient noise,
Yeah,
and especially outside with wind. Is the
Yeah,
problem.
short shotgun microphones are good for natural sound, mat sound. But in order to use them for interview situations, you need to be pretty close with the microphone. And the little gray covers that go on the microphone when you buy it are not sufficient for anything other than interior use or completely still. Anything over 5 miles an hour just cracks up the wind. And it's the same thing that happens to your iPhone microphones. You just get so you need what's called a dead cat to fit over. It's a little soft furry thing, and it isn't living. It isn't living, and so you can call it a softie. Other people call it it's been preserved so it doesn't produce any oil.
I will say another accessory was the monopod, but not a long monopod. It's just like a handheld monopod. Hand what?
It's just a hand grip.
Hand grip, because it helped with stabilizing, and then the clip-on part that went on it.
Yeah, I do not recommend selfie sticks that have spring loads because I've seen too many of them have the phones pop out, and the interface between a hard surface on the ground and the phone is not great. It usually leads to real problems. So what I recommend is this red can, because it's metal and it just tightens. Right? It works on a variety of things. And then this is the second component to the red can, and it screws in.
And you can order these on Amazon, which is really easy.
Yes,
And
it's
affordable.
through my blog, and I get a 10%. Too old, that ain't gonna happen. But so I have this loaded down here. What I like about this is that it gives you a pretty solid support, for stabilizing the image. The neat thing about using Filmic Pro is it has an image stabilization in the app, and it just really helps with the shakiness that's inherent in these light phones. The other thing that I don't have, but basically my rig allows me to put a little mount here, and then I have a short shotgun microphone. I also use what are called radio microphones, so they're these like a clip-on microphone, but it's attached to a transmitter, and then there's a receiver, and I put the receiver signal into the headphone jack or the lightning jack. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can talk to you about outside of this that really helps. This is about $35 cost. The other thing aside, and so the lavaliers are like $25-30 for a really inexpensive one. They can go up to hundreds, right, for professional or semi-professional grades. The lavalier that I use in my work is called the Countryman B6 microphone. And while most clip-ons, the size of the microphone is something like this, the top tip of my finger, right, and it's exposed. In documentary film, we kind of not draw attention to the apparatus. So we want to bury the microphones. And so my microphone head is about the size of that little bolt. And so it's easy to position in a collar, down a shirt, and hair if you have hair.
Do you get that
But
typical feedback that
no,
we know when
if you
someone's
mount
shuffling?
if you mount it properly inside, the easiest thing to do is just buy moleskin, the stuff for blisters. You just cut a patch, cover it, and slap it on the inside. Again, I can show you how to do that. But what I also like are lens adapters. And so right now I have a lens. This is from a company called Zeiss. And I don't have all my adapters, but I'll do this really quick. I wasn't expecting to do this, but I'll just show you fast.
I will say while he's setting that up, that is for the mic for my classes, the little clip-on $30 one works just fine. And for being outside, we used all sorts of windbreaks that were off screen that you didn't see, but people standing or holding up, things to try to block it. So just trying to help each other, the different groups out.
Totally professional. I've had people hold up safety blankets, raincoats.
We were holding up jackets and things to try to block the wind sometimes, yeah.
That's typical. So what's interesting too is that another thing to remember is put the person's back to the wind. It's not that hard to think about and remember, but a lot of people won't do it. I filmed in Antarctica many, many years ago, and I kept wondering why the wind was constantly bombarding my face, and I got frostbite on my cheek and nose and ear. So I know when it gets to 13 degrees Fahrenheit or below, because those three spots act up. And what I realized is on this mountaineering expedition, every time that I was stopping to find out what was going on with the climbers, they put their back to the wind, and therefore I was facing. So it's just something to think about. But let me just show you what happens with the wide angle adapter, which I really absolutely love. I'm just gonna go into video. And if you take a, I don't know if you can see well, but over the top of my head, just get a sense of the field of view, how wide a view I have. That's what we get with a wide angle lens. And if I unscrew it and don't drop it, safety, thank you. That's what happens.
It's so cool.
Now the newer iPhones, Samsungs, LGs, all that, they have two lenses. So you get a portrait lens plus a kind of normal wide. But I do like to supplement with a wide angle lens. And because this is an iPhone 6s Plus, I don't have the telephoto, but I do have the telephoto, which is this. How many of you have 7s or up?
I have the Note 8, so Samsung.
Okay, so it's the same, you're still irritated. Okay, so you saw what the wide angle was, and you saw what the normal lens was, and so this is the telephoto. So, it's not the best subject, but that's what.
It's actually facing us, Larry, so thank you.
Yeah.
Better? Sorry. Thanks. Is that the case with the other one too?
No.
So I touched something? Yeah, Kyo's my ground. So anyway, so that's what the telephoto does. The problem with the telephoto is that unless you are really solid, you're magnifying not only the image, but also the shape. So anyway, so I like these little add-ons. The Zeiss are probably the best in the business. Moment, M-O-N-E-N-T, not misspelled, it's just spelled Moment. They make cases and these, and they're both about $100 for each lens. You can buy much less expensive lenses in the $70 to $60 range. The problem is that they kind of fall apart at the edges. So that's a problem. Other questions for us on another subject? What I would like to be able to do is to work with technology folks here and come up with like a little like an instructional video and whatever.
It'd be great if we have little kits that could be checked out of the library too, to use.
They have, you actually can sign out for short-term use clip-on microphones.
Right, but I couldn't do it for the week.
Not for the week, but there
Right.
should be a way for that to happen.
Yeah.
If we believe in the RISE initiative.
I mean, because I think the kids got a lot, students got a lot out of, approaching their research projects with a different, from a different, outcome. It wasn't just, they're not just writing a paper or doing a presentation. It was more, there was more to it. They developed new skills also, which they really liked. And so that's one of the learning outcomes for the class is that they're going to develop different skills that they're going to be able to use in the future. And it's not just how to approach a research question, but actually how to present in different ways also.
And, I think that what's also really important is that we have so many varied audiences or stakeholders for any work. And I think, when we did the Galapagos, we realized that there's this intersectionality where how you tell a story in science, how you tell a story or a policy paper in policy or anthropology or video, it's important for everybody to know how to tell those narratives in those domains for those stakeholders, for those audiences, right? And of course, I could be like a video poet or something, and just do my own thing, which I did, way back when I was in grad school, and put the camera on aiming it at the TV, and you got an infinite feedback of the TV screen, stuff like that. So radical experimental filmmaking is fun, but my career has been based on understanding and telling other people's stories, and so I have to work with science, have to work with technology, have to work with science, with anthropology. Otherwise, I don't really have stories to tell. So, but I like empowering faculty and students to better express themselves, so they have more authorial control over the statement that they want to make to other publics, other schools. And on ADA compliance, all of my classes have to either, we do post stuff to YouTube, and we use auto captioning, which has some trouble with names, but if it's a solid audio track, the auto function, the AI, the artificial intelligence out there is phenomenal. And what I do is, when possible, I'll have my students, I'm going to be teaching a documentary production class this semester. Their final projects have to have grammar, punctuation, corrections in the Google Doc, and it's very easy to do. So, and for instance, on the videos or on the PowerPoints in the Google Doc, to be ADA compliant in still photography, you have to have metadata so that you can hear what's written and hear or read what the photo is about. So it's like a captioning.
So it's like audio description.
It's an audio description.
And some people will think that like just having subtitles is enough, but subtitles is only doing what is not in English. So you still need closed captioning on things that are in English. But this just helps everybody. It's also really good for our students that English is a second language. And so while it's for individuals with disabilities, it really works for everybody. I mean, who doesn't read captions on a video? I find myself doing that more than anything.
And to follow that up, I think that for my students who are going to be professional filmmakers of one kind or another, mainly a documentary for me, they should take responsibility. They should take responsibility for websites, for, nothing at AU can be posted without this stuff anymore. And I think that that's appropriate, it's fair. If we want to be inclusive, That's what our students should learn. That's what faculty should practice.
There's another question there, but I think then we can finish up.
Yeah. Oh, I
Kind of following on that, one thing I was thinking about is we're talking about students sharing photos and attributing it to each other. The media projects, there's also like, so I was teaching writing and teaching a lot of attribution and citation with that, but then when you do a media project, it feels like it all goes out the window, and sometimes I had to make a choice about, do I have time to teach them how to appropriately attribute other photographs, the soundtrack, things like little GIFs and things, and there aren't formal standards like there is for writing. So I'm wondering how, did you attempt that? There are, I'm sure, documentary film, but it hasn't bled into other.
For voting rights and things, I've had in like websites or other people's blogs and things. There are, and I give them a link to the site that how I want them to use, the format that I want them to use. But right, it doesn't cover everything. So then there's always the question of, well, what about this one? And then we have to figure it out, kind of thing.
Yeah, if you have time, I think it's important. My feeling is that
citations are pretty important.
The citations are important, and the library has very good sourcing for how to cite material taken off the web, and how to cite movies, how to cite television shows, and how to cite other people's works. And for capstone work or for final projects where they will be potential for portfolio distribution, it's kind of like you got to do it. But if you think about the way I would look at it is, what are your deliverables? What are you gonna present at the end? Is it going to be a 5-minute video, or what you have, or is it going to be a photo essay? And so, what do you need for those deliverables? That are beyond the product itself. So I have to produce releases. I have to produce credits. I have to produce a music log. I have to produce all this crap, and I can hire people to do it, but I want my students to know that you're responsible for it. But I don't always insert stuff up. Yeah.
This is for Film It.
Film It Pro. Yeah, well.
You had it for a second. There it is.
I'm working on an Ecuador film. So where's... Okay. So if you take a picture of... If you take a picture of... Whoops. So these are the first link up there, the first two links are videos from an SIS 3-day online course that I taught for the first time this last fall, and I really enjoyed it. It was a synchronous online course, and we met Saturday and Sunday. They had a week to produce work, and then we met again on the following Saturday. I do an SIS course here face-to-face. That's a 2-day course. It's a Saturday and Sunday course. And the students come in with some, selfie stuff and some photos and, stuff like that. But the work, these two examples, both are dealing with getting outside. It's part of their SIS concepts that they're interested in. And I was really impressed with how well they did with my download on it. And it's kind of fun. Also, we're in negotiation with hosting the 2nd annual Smart Film Festival here in the DC region. I advised, did a workshop, and was a judge for the first one that was held down in Arlington. But hopefully it'll be hosted by SOC. So that's in negotiation. And the work that I saw from around the world, both in fiction and nonfiction, last year, completely blew me away. It was projected on a 4K projector. It knocked my socks off. And I'm happy to share that with faculty, staff, and students.
With the last link, it says PL, HTTP. Is that correct? Look at the bottom link, it says PL, HTTP.
Oh, I don't know why it says that.
So just when you.
No, it should, I copied it wrong, that's all.
Okay.
And which one is the download link?
So this is the download, AU Keys Filmic Pro.
I did that, and it didn't, it says there's a problem.
Really?
It says something's wrong here. Did anyone else, did it work for anyone? It worked for me. It did? I must have typed it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, well, another place to get it is, let me just double check if I open up Evernote. If you have trouble with it, just email me. My email is Engel, ENGEL, and American. So. So this should do it. Oh, that's right, I'm not connected to the internet. Thank you. I hate it when they're so specific and insulting. Yeah, so if I log on, it'll take us to SOC, and you'll get your free $15. So we done?
Yeah, well, we can finish a couple minutes early.
Yeah, we can finish. Oh, yeah, is there a evaluation?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, if anybody wants to follow up, especially on, I think, maybe what we'll do is on a Blackboard, post rubrics, right? And maybe some other samples or whatever. And I'll post accessories and a link to a Prezi that I use when I do my presentation. And if any of you folks are interested in helping me create, something that I don't have to be involved with in the future to get this out, I'd be happy to do that.
I just have a quick question for Jesse.
Yeah.
So now your students understand the value of quality photography, and so I'm just thinking, down the road we're teaching all of our students to be photographers and videographers. I'm just hoping that someday that they realize the importance and hire our people. I mean, that's the great thing about teaching them the basics, is that they understand, they realize the importance of, we really need to hire professionals.
Yep.
Because that way it keeps Larry and I and all of our other MFA students.
Yeah, but I'm at the end of my career, so I don't know.
You used to be 6'4" when you're in that camera.
You know what? When I was 40, I had a really bad back, and I went to the orthopedist, and this shoulder is 2 inches shorter than this shoulder, and that's because I spent 20 years with a 25, 30-pound film camera on my shoulder. So I have shrunk. I've shrunk an inch and a half here.
But to your point, though, I think assigning this made me think a lot about visual thinking. And, I was trained to think, perhaps because writing is so important for what I do, I was trained to think in those terms and representing thoughts and ideas in words, and that's so derivative of what my field of anthropology actually is, because it is very visual. So that completely helped me understand through this medium. I was, sensitized, and I became so much more aware of something very important that I should be doing in my field, but that I'm not doing.
Well, that's why there's a great course that I've taught, and Larry's teaching it too, is visual literacy from SOC. I think every student for this university should be taking it, because we're all visual learners.
Right.
And the importance of the LC. We go back for 100 years and look at those pictures. You were looking at those photos because you need that information, whether it's the Native American stuff that I've been through, and it's vital. And by having technically correct and well-composed images, and video now too, how important that is for your field, for our science field, for the Galapagos, and even in Cuba. And I just try to making a case that, hey, now my students have known the basics, get them into the visual literacy course, but also to be friends with all my other video and photography practice, because it's a collaboration process. Look what Larry said. He's been telling other people's stories for all these years, and that's the importance of bringing everyone together. And I think that's the importance of AU. Sorry, one more time. The importance of AU or a bigger school is that we make that network and we make that connection between all the schools.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry. The communication is communication. So
Totally.
everybody tells a story.
Some tell it better than others, and it's important to be that good storyteller so that everyone is engaged. So,
cool.
I want to thank Larry for organizing
Yeah.
this, because I think it was, it's not something that I would have thought of on my own, but it added value to what I've done, and it made me see the importance of it even more, to just kind of pull my thoughts together and then talk about it with y'all. So I
appreciate that, and you don't have to pay me the $20.
You have to come to my class as well.
I do have to go.
Take it to lunch.
Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts? Stay in touch.
Thank you.